What are you supposed to do when people in your family are competing? Hi, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Saira, the show where I answer your questions about spirituality, relationships, personal growth, and mental health. Today's question comes from Jen. Jen says, how do you avoid competition in families? How do you avoid competition in families? I love this question because there's so many layers to a very, very simple question. So when I think about competition in families, the first thing that comes to my mind is sibling rivalry, right? We've heard about that. But there's also other kinds of competition that happen in families. Sometimes adults are competing with the children. Sometimes adults are competing with each other. Maybe the primary couple is competing with each other. Maybe there's an extended family or a joint family living situation. There's competition within those dynamics. So how do you avoid competition in families? It's challenging because many of us were raised through competition, right? So who's the best at fill in the blank? So there's this story about it's important to be the best. See, if you think about how we get our sense of belonging, right? Or versus our sense of power, they're kind of two different things. The sense of power, the way that we talk about it at least in the West, is there's a ladder, there's somebody at the top of the ladder, there's somebody at the bottom of the ladder, and then you see where you fit in the ladder. And that's how much power you have in any given situation, is where are you on, people say, the totem pole or the ladder, right? That's one aspect of our experience, which is we competing to get to the top, and there could only be one first place and things like that. But competition doesn't actually engender belonging. Competition can reduce the sense of belonging, because belonging is about coming into the circle. Belonging is about being the same as everyone else and being part of something rather than better than or worse than. So if there's competition in the family, what that tells me is that there's an opportunity to start cultivating a sense of belonging in the family rather than competition. There's a few different ways to do this. So if you're thinking about sibling rivalry, for example, one of the reasons that sibling rivalry happens, there's several, but one of them is because children get compared to each other. Why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you be more like your brother? Your cousin is doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Right? And so adults compare children to each other. And, it can be in the really simplest, most innocuous, innocent ways. My sister had triplets, and people are comparing them all the time. Oh, this one sleeps better, this one eats better, this one is more playful, this one is more quiet, and they're babies, right? And they're already being compared to each other. It's kind of natural for us to do that, and so we have to kind of watch that instinct, or that impulse, not instinct, that impulse to compare children to each other. Because when you compare children to each other, again, it's the ladder, right? It's this person's better and this person's not as good, and that sits with kids. And what happens is then it's like there has to be this competition for your love, because if you're comparing this person's better at that and that, the way that a child interprets that is they're more worthy of love than I am because they're better at this or that. I know it's irrational for an adult mind, but that's what's happening in a child's mind. So don't compare your children to each other or to other children. Okay, so that's the first one as far as sibling rivalry and that kind of competition. If you think about other kinds of competition, whether it's between children or adults or whoever's in the family, is as a family being willing to celebrate achievements, and not just academic achievements or work-related achievements or success achievements, other types of achievements and milestones as well. So an example might be, I'll give you an example from my own life. I have a son he's a reader, he loves learning, he's really into science and math. I have a daughter who's a reader, loves learning, very into art and language. So they're interested in similar things, but in very different thematic areas, right? So what we celebrate for him, the milestones that we celebrate for him, are things like reaching the next level of complexity in his coding, in learning how to code. Whereas what we might celebrate for her is having a painting sold at an art exhibit, which has happened. My little 9-year-old sold a painting, right? So very, very different. Like which one's better, which one's more of an achievement. We're not going to say. We're going to say that these are different children, and we're going to celebrate their different achievements in different ways as well. Also remembering to celebrate the achievements of the adults, because once we get to a certain age, we stop celebrating ourselves, right? We stop giving credit to ourselves for the hard work that we do. And we only really do that in the context of maybe earning more money or getting a better position at work. We don't really do it for things like, I hit my milestone of making sure I get regular sleep. And now for the last 6 months, I've been really good at getting a restful night's sleep. We don't think of that as an achievement. But if you think about what it takes to make that happen, you had to make changes and you had to make commitments and you had to be dedicated in order to change your sleep pattern, for example, or in order to change your capacity to be present in the home, or whatever it is that you're working on, and to celebrate. Now, how would you celebrate an achievement? Well, you talk about it, you share what you've learned from it, and you just kind of give each other pats on the back. It doesn't have to be a party. You don't need to have a party for being able to sleep through the night as a 37-year-old. Maybe you do, but you don't. I don't think you do. But it is about marking it by talking about it and by saying, this is something important that I've done. So what that starts to do is that those who are the high achievers in the family aren't the only ones getting celebrated, because that's usually what happens. I know that's what happened in my family. I was the high achiever, and so I had the big party for graduation. I had the big party for like grade 6 graduation, grade 9 graduation, grade 12 graduation, undergrad, master's, PhD. All of these milestones were like huge parties in my family. Like the whole extended family showed up, and it was this huge celebration, which was great for me. Awesome for me. I loved it, but not so much for my siblings and my cousins who never had those parties, right? Because they didn't, academic success wasn't a big milestone or a big achievement in those particular, in their particular lives. They had other things going on besides getting the A or whatever it is, being the valedictorian. So making sure to celebrate achievement. The last thing I would say is to start realizing or remembering that it's important to have an individual identity along with a family identity. So sometimes, people like my husband sometimes will say to the kids, Sabzalis don't do that, right? So Saira Sabzali, I changed my name when I got married to my husband. Sabzalis don't do that. Or Sabzalis do that. And so what we're doing when we're saying those kinds of things is we're starting to create a family identity. But we have to be careful that family identity doesn't eclipse the individual identity, that we can hold both, right? That people are allowed to have their individual values and interests and needs and also belong to the family, right? So because often in families, what happens is that, especially in collectivist cultures, is that those who are different from the family end up feeling like they don't belong. And so that creates this weird competition in the family. So individual identity and family identity as equally important. That's another way to minimize competition in families. I have lots of other thoughts on that, but that's all for today. If you have a question about family dynamics or any other topic that has to do with mental health, relationships, spirituality, or personal growth, please send me an email. You can reach me through the contact information through the website at the end of the video, and I will see you next time. Bye.